Welcome back, guys. Today we are talking about songwriting, and more specifically, the business of songwriting. I talk to a lot of songwriters, a lot of artists, and it never really ceases to amaze me that most songwriters don't really understand the business of songwriting and how you make money. What is a publishing company? What is a PRO or a performing rights organization? How you make money as a songwriter? Where does that money come from? How do you register your songs? What's the difference in registering a song and copywriting a song? And to me, you can't really go into something unless you have all of the information. So this could turn out to be a long video, so for that, I apologize. So if you need to go to the bathroom, get you some coffee, walk the dog, that sort of thing, you might want to do it because we might be here for a few minutes. Who is a songwriter? Well, to me, a songwriter is anybody who writes songs. It's that guy or girl in their bedroom, playing the piano, coming up with lyrics, playing the guitar, putting melody to lyrics, to words. Now, how do you go from there to being what we call a pro songwriter? There's a really simple definition that I have for that, and maybe it'll make sense to you. The minute that you interject expectations into the process, that's when you go from music to the music business. And I think that's very important for people to understand, because I know for myself, I got into music because I was passionate about it, because I loved playing the instruments. I loved writing songs. It made me happy. I saw that it made other people happy. So that's why I got into it. And I'm sure that's why a lot of you want to get into it or got into it as well. But the minute that you expect that song that you've just written to do anything other than please you, or you expect it to go anywhere beyond that bedroom door, then you're entering the music business. And that's a completely different world. It's a world not based on how much you love to do something, because at the end of the day, it is a business. So the difference between a songwriter and a pro songwriter, I often say it's like sports, because I assimilate everything to sports because I'm a huge football fan. But what's the difference between an amateur athlete and a pro athlete? Right. The pro athlete gets paid to play. Okay? That's the difference between an amateur songwriter and a professional songwriter. Little side note here, that somewhere in that jump, we need to make something very clear, because I hear this all the time. We do not sell our songs. Okay, that's not how it works. We don't write this song and then sell it to somebody, sell it to an artist. That doesn't happen. That's not how it happens. We'll talk a little bit later in this video about that process and how that does happen, and how we as songwriters do make money from the songs that we write. Okay, but we do not sell our songs. So let's get that out there real clear. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times somebody will ask me, even in my own family, hey, have you sold a song lately? No, not in 20 years. I've never sold a song. It's because it's not what we do. We don't sell songs. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So expectations. That's the first big key to remember. Okay, that the difference between music and the music business is expectations. If you expect that song that you've written to people to buy it on iTunes, or for it to get you a gig at the local coffee shop playing live, or I would even go as far as say, when you play it for somebody else and are expecting a response, that's the business side of music. That's not just music because you love it and music because you're passionate about it. That is going from music to the music business. And the two are very, very different. Okay, so we've talked about the difference in amateur songwriters and pro songwriters. Now let's kind of start the process of talking about how songwriters make money. The first step in that process is to be affiliated with a PRO. Performing Rights Organization. We call them PROs for short. I think it's pretty simple and self-explanatory as why we do that. There are three major PROs in the United States. You've got BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC. BMI and ASCAP are the largest of the two. They have hundreds of thousands of songwriters that write for each one of them. So they're very large. CSAC is a more private organization. They all three do the same thing, but CSAC is much smaller, and it's smaller on purpose. It's more of a family. It's a smaller group of people. You get more attention. At CSAC, I found from the representatives, because I am a CSAC writer. I was a BMI writer for 15 years. I didn't feel like I had a great experience when I was at BMI. I like when I leave somebody a voicemail that I get a phone call back eventually. Or if I send an email, I kind of expect to get an email back. I don't believe in this bullshit theory that people are too busy to call people back or email people back. And I just found that to be a problem at BMI. I found the communication to not be what I was expecting it to be. Also understanding that it's a very large corporation. What they do is very important. Let's talk a little bit about that. What does a performing rights organization do? They're very important, by the way. They are the ones that are responsible for collecting and distributing royalties for the songs that the songwriters have written. So if your song's played on the radio, or if they also collect from live music venues and department stores, and anybody basically that uses music in a retail type environment. Radio stations pay royalties to play the music on the air. Those get collected by your PRO and then distributed to the various songwriters for the songs that were played by the radio station. Same thing works with department stores everywhere else. If you ever walked into a restaurant or a department store or an auto parts store, any of these places that are playing music when you walk in, they're paying royalties, and they're paying royalty rates to be able to use that music in their business establishment. Your PRO is responsible for collecting those royalties from those outlets and then making sure that you, the songwriter, gets paid. It's a very important part of the process. How much does it cost to join a PRO? Nothing. Absolutely zero. $0, nothing. If you want to join as a composer, songwriter, ASCAP and BMI, CSAC are completely free. Now, if you want to join as a publisher, I believe ASCAP will let you establish a publishing company for free. With BMI, there is a charge. That's not really something I want to get into right now about whether or not you as an independent songwriter should start a publishing company. I don't think you need to. That's another video. That's another time. That's another sinkhole to get into. Let's just kind of stick to songwriters. I think it's very important that you join a PRO. Don't just take my 2 cents worth it. Do your homework. Go to BMI.com. Read about BMI. Go to ASCAP.com. Read about ASCAP. Go to CSAC.com and read about CSAC. Find which one of these performing rights organizations that you feels like home to you. Try to call and talk to a rep at ASCAP or BMI and see what they say. I find most often that most people, that's not the way that most people end up choosing the PRO that they choose. It's more that they know somebody. I know this buddy of mine, he's a songwriter, he writes for BMI. I know this songwriter, she writes for ASCAP, and she's always talking about how good ASCAP is, so I'll join ASCAP. To me, I would always steer people towards CSAC because of the experience that I've had with them. I've been doing this a long time, and to me, CSAC is more It's more songwriter friendly. To me, it's more of a family, and I think that's really important in our business. I found that they really care about songwriters. Now, I'm not saying that ASCAP doesn't care about their songwriters or that BMI doesn't care about their songwriters. I'm sure they do. I just didn't have a positive experience. But I know a lot of people that have. I know a lot of my good friends that I write with on a weekly basis. Some of them are BMI writers, some of them are ASCAP writers, and some of them are CSAC writers. The most important thing is protecting your songs and protecting your work. That all starts with joining a PRO. Like I said, it's absolutely free to do it. Check them out online and see what makes sense to you. Join one, we call it affiliated. So you're affiliated with one of the PROs. That will allow you to go in and register your songs. So you can register the title, you can register the date of creation, the songwriter's information, you can put the lyrics in there. Anything that's pertaining to that work, you can register it within your PRO's system. Now, that is not the same thing as copywriting your songs, okay? Big difference. But they are protected in a certain sense in that you do enter the date of creation, you do enter the title, you enter all the specific information. If you want to talk about copywriting, we could that's another video as well. I always suggest that people do the poor man's copyright. If you don't write for a publishing company like me, my publishing company takes care of copywriting all of my songs, so I don't really have to worry about that. But a long time ago, before I did have a publishing deal, I always did the poor man's copyright, and it'll stand up in a court of law all day long. Because when it comes to copywriting your songs, whether you may not know this, it costs the same amount of money to copyright one song as it does to copyright 2,000 songs, right? So I always recommend people that don't have publishing deals, if you're a songwriter, once a month, type out the lyrics to the song. Put the title at the top, the date of creation. If you wrote it by yourself, put your name down, your legal name. If you wrote it with another writer, write all of that writer's information down. Date of creation, very important. So just take those songs, put them in an envelope, and mail them to yourself, but don't ever open the envelope. If anything ever happened and came into question or a lawsuit about who was the actual original writer of this song, you can go back to that envelope. They can open it in court, see that it's sealed, and the date when it was mailed. They can open that up, and whoever was written first, that's who wins. So I just always advise people, until you get a publishing deal, just do the poor man's copyright. And worry about all of that later. But the important thing about the PRO is to register your works. Very important. Get on the systems when you write a song and register it. That's how they know what songs are yours. And if you do have a song that gets out there, and let's say you're an independent artist, you've written a song yourself, you start getting it out there, it gets a little bit of radio airplay, and you want the royalties for that. Well, if it's not registered in your PRO system, you're not ever going to see those royalties. So it's very important to do. It's easy to do. All of them offer online portals for you to be able to go in and register your songs. One other thing leading into this is I want to talk about splits for a second, because this is something that a lot of people don't really understand. Nashville does it one way, LA kind of does it another way. I'm going to kind of go over the Nashville way more so than the LA way, because anything goes in LA, and I've seen horror stories happen out there with songs. But let's talk about how you split when you're writing a song, how that song is split. Okay? So if you're writing it by yourself, that's an easy one. The math on that one is simple. It's 100% yours. But here's the thing you got to remember about publishing. I can't think of anything else on the face of the planet where there is more than 100% of something other than publishing. When you take a song, that song represents 200%. There's 100% writer side and 100% publisher side. I know. It's 200%. But it's still only one thing. I get it. Well, let's talk about splits. Let's just talk about it from a songwriting standpoint for a second. If you write a song by yourself, then you own 100% of the writer's share and 100% of the publisher's share. Let's say you write it with a friend or another co-writer. In Nashville, we split those evenly right down the middle. So you own 50% and the other co-writer owns 50%. Now, here's where it can get kind of screwy. You own 100% of your writer's share on that 50%. The co-writer also owns 100% of the writer's share of their 50%. I know, this is what I'm saying. If you ever find anybody that tells you they know everything about this, call them a liar, because they are. So, but it's easier when you think about it in ones, twos, and threes. Although these days you see, you pull up the pamphlet on a Beyonce record, there's 17 writers on a song. Nobody makes any money, and it makes it very difficult. But that doesn't happen too often. A lot of times, most of the time in Nashville, you'll see sometimes 4 writers, sometimes 5 writers, but most of the time it's 2 or 3. So, 1, you wrote it by yourself, you own 100%. You write it with a co-writer, you split it 50-50. If you write it with 2 other co-writers, then 2 of them get 33 and a third, and 1 person gets 33.34% because everything's leading up to equal 100%. Okay? So always remember that. It's also easy. If you need a calculator, use a calculator. If you write it with 3 other co-writers, then everybody owns 25% of the song. I mean, I really could go on and on and on about splits. And like I said, Nashville's different from LA. In LA, sometimes you'll have, like I said, 10, 12 writers on a song, and everybody's got a little piece of it. But if you kind of just try to stick with the philosophy that if it's 2 of you, it's an even split, 3 of you, it's a 3-way split, 4 of you, it's a 4-way split, it's just a lot easier. And that's pretty much how we do it here in Nashville anyway, is everybody just gets an even split. Now let's talk about publishing companies and publishing deals. Because you hear that, oh, I want to get a publishing deal, or I've got a publishing deal. What exactly does that mean? What that means is a publishing company has signed you as a staff writer for that publishing company. In exchange for that, they pay you a draw, which is an advance against royalties, against future royalties. If you're just starting out, the pay is not very good. It's $1,200 a month, $1,400 a month. I heard a new writer got a deal the other day. It's the most I'd heard of was like $1,800 a month. But traditionally starting out, it's just not that much money. Because the publisher wants the songs to make money, and they want to recoup that money. So every dime that they pay you goes against your balance. And then all of that money from demos, your draw or salary, however you want to say that, but we call it a draw because it's a draw against future revenue that your songs are going to make. Demo costs, anything that publisher puts out financially on your behalf or on your music's behalf is kept in a ledger. And then let's say you have a song that gets out, an artist cuts it and it starts making money. Well, and those checks start coming into the publisher, then you start to recoup that balance, and the publisher starts to recoup on their investment in you as a songwriter. So that's kind of how that works in a relationship between a publisher and a staff songwriter. Let's talk about a couple different kind of deals in some terminology that you may have heard before. There are full publishing deals, and there are co-publishing deals, and there are single song contracts. In a full publishing deal, this is where a publisher basically, in exchange for your draw, what they pay you every month, your salary, they take 100% of the publishing on those songs that you write during the length of the term of that contract. They own 100% of the publishing. That's you giving up the publishing that you own to that publisher in exchange for their services, the draw that they'll pay you, but they get 100% of it. I've seen some crazy deals here in Nashville where publishers have taken 100% of the publishing, and they've also taken a percentage of the writer's share from the writer. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't ever advise writers to give up their writer's share on anything. There's plenty of money to go around with a song that becomes a hit, that I don't believe in the publisher asking for the songwriter's share as well. So I'm not a big fan of that. But if you do want to sign with a publishing company, more times than not, they're going to ask for 100% of the publishing. And that's acceptable. You keep 100% of the writer's share, they get 100% of the publisher's share, and everybody's happy. Now that's a full publishing deal where they're paying the draw, they're paying all the demo costs, they're paying everything, the staff, they're paying everything that is required of the publishing company to get your songs out there to the producers, artists, A&R people, to get the songs placed, to get the songs cut. In a co-publishing deal, what you're really looking at is you as a songwriter assigning a certain percentage, let's use 50%, assigning 50% of your publishing to that publisher, not the entire 100%, to where you get into a situation where you're giving that publisher 50% and you're keeping 50%, and then you also keep 100% of your writer's share. These deals can really be structured any way you can possibly imagine, and they have been. I've seen crazy scenarios where, a publisher's getting 25%, but they're also getting 50% of the writer's share. It's really anything that you and that publisher come to terms with that can be the deal. But the true meaning of a co-publishing agreement is where you're more partnering with the publisher instead of working for that publisher. You see this a lot of times when you have writers that have had success, because we've seen what the publishing is worth. And if you're not reliant on that draw, if you don't need that draw from the publishing company, if you've made money another way, or you've recouped a catalog from a previous publishing deal, and now you're getting all of those royalties yourself, and you're out of that publishing deal, you still want to have that creative and that supportive environment of a publishing company, but you don't need their draw, or you don't need as big of a draw. Then you can approach that company about doing a co-publishing agreement where you're not giving up 100% of the publishing, where you're keeping some of the publishing for yourself. A lot of times when you see these co-publishing deals, like I said, it's generally in situations where songwriters have had a great deal of success and they don't necessarily need the draw or the paycheck from the publisher every month to get by. You're more counting on the creative services of the publisher to get more songs cut and get more songs placed and keep the revenue flowing in. I've always liked co-publishing deals because I never liked giving anything up. I don't like giving somebody 100% of the publishing. I've been in that situation. I've had a hit song when I had a publishing deal that I had to give all the publishing away. Yes, I still got my writer's side, and they always say they're equal, but they're not. For whatever reason, it just seems to me that the publishing checks are always a little bit bigger than the writer's side checks. So I've always, I guess for the last 7 years, I've had a co-publishing deal to where I have an agreement with my publishing company. They handle all of the creative. They pitch the songs. They plug the songs. They register all the songs with the performing rights organizations. They copyright all the songs. But they don't pay for my demos because I like to own the masters of everything that I cut. So they don't have that cost. And they don't have to pay me a draw. So I bring something to the table, they bring something to the table, and we share those responsibilities in order to get the songs to do what we ultimately want them to do, and that is to generate revenue and create royalties and bring money into both sides. But a co-publishing deal, if you think of it this way, a co-publishing deal is an agreement between the publishing company and the songwriter to share the publishing. And not the songwriter signing over 100% of their publishing to a publisher in exchange for a draw against future royalties. So believe me, there's a lot more to it than that. But if you think of it in those terms, that's kind of a broad overview. But publishing companies are very important. Being a writer signed to a publishing company is very important, especially in this town, in Nashville and in Los Angeles and any other music scenario where relationships matter, which is every single one. Being a part of a larger entity is always a good thing. Most of the time, those publishing companies, or really any publishing company that you would want to be associated with, has a long history and is more established in the business. They have the relationships with the A&R staff, with the producers, with the managers, with the artists themselves. They have those relationships to where they can take those songs and get past the gatekeepers that you can't get past because they've already got those established relationships. So getting with a credible publisher, either in a full publishing deal or a co-publishing situation, is one of the most important steps that you can take as a songwriter. So there you have kind of an overview, and I know it seems like a long video, but this stuff is so detailed that I encourage you to educate yourself. That more than anything. If you're an aspiring songwriter or an aspiring artist, or anything that has anything to do with the business, especially the entertainment business, the music business, do all of the research that you can possibly do. Know what you're getting yourself into. Know what these terms, and you hear these music business terms thrown around all the time. Investigate those for yourself. Know what they mean. Know what you're talking about and what you're getting yourself into. Research the PROs. Research publishing companies. Ask people that you know that have gone before you that have been successful at it. Ask them how they got where they are. My email address is in the description below. If you ever have any questions, feel free to email me. I get a lot of emails, but I do my best to respond to all the questions. Sometimes I'll even put them in the answers in the videos. Sometimes I'll get a question from you guys, and I'm thinking that makes a great topic for a video in itself. But educate yourself. Know what you're talking about. Know what your goals are. Publishing is a very complex subject. Making money from your songs, that's a very complex subject. You have to know the business side of it, and you have to be prepared. Going all the way back to the beginning, we were talking about the difference between a songwriter and a pro songwriter and what that really means. And like I said at the beginning, the difference is the expectation level that you have. That minute that you decide that you want this song that you've written or these songs that you've written to help you go from A to B, the escalator that takes you from A to B also moves you from music to the music business. And when it comes to business, everybody knows it's dog eat dog. It's rough. It's hard. Music business is no different, and it's probably 1,000% more difficult than any other business out there. It's difficult to understand. We've barely scratched the surface on the business of songwriting today. But I wanted to kind of give you an overview of things to look for and things to know. And do your research. Like I said, get online, watch as much as you can. We've talked about songwriter splits. How if there's two of you, split it down the middle, 50-50. Three of you, 33.3, 33.3, and 33.4, because it has to equal up to 100%. If there's four of you, 25 apiece. It's just a way to keep it simple. That's not a guideline. That's not a standard. because Lord knows it's been done a million different ways, a million different times. But if you just kind of think of it in equal splits, then you kind of get a good understanding about co-writing with other people and what you're giving up when you do that. We've talked about publishing companies, about publishing deals, co-publishing deals. I know it's a lot to kind of get your head around, and this is kind of glossing over a very in-depth subject. And that's why I say, if you've got questions on details, don't ever hesitate to shoot me an email, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, hit subscribe and be on the lookout for more content. I've got a lot of great ideas about videos coming up, plus just taking you behind the scenes in the studio when I'm producing a record, and also bringing in some special guests to talk about some different things as well. So until next time, keep creating, keep asking questions, keep pushing the boundaries. See you next time.